Subscribe because it's free.
The galaxy was a glittering tapestry of life, a web of civilization stitched together by trade routes and fragile alliances. Billions of beings thrived across its expanse, until Xyrath decided to unravel it all. They were a cold, calculating species, their minds as sharp as the crystalline spires of their homeworld. Conquest wasn't enough for them. They wanted dominion over life itself. So they forged a weapon, a virus, bioengineered perfection, designed to infiltrate and destroy. It wasn't a blunt tool of war. No explosions, no fleets of warships. Just a silent, insidious plague that spread to the void like a whisper. They released it into the interstellar winds, carried by merchant vessels and refugee ships, a gift wrapped in death. Within weeks, it touched a dozen worlds, then 100, then thousands. The Xyrath watched from their shadowed thrones, waiting to reap the chaos. First to fall were Krell, insectoid traders whose colonies spanned asteroid belts. The virus slipped into their hives, rewriting their biology with ruthless precision. Their exoskeletons thickened, growing inward instead of out, a cruel armor that crushed their organs. Queens shrieked as their workers suffocated, trapped in shells they couldn't shed. Entire systems went dark, their buzzing transmissions replaced by static. Next came the Zythar, sky-dwellers with feathers that shimmered like dawn. The virus struck their wings, sprouting twisted, useless limbs until their bodies couldn't bear the weight. They plummeted from floating cities, a rain of broken grace. Their song silenced forever. The Vorn, lords of ocean planets, fared no better. Their gills fused into solid flesh, drowning them in waters they'd ruled for millennia. Each species faced a tailored doom, the virus adapting to their weaknesses, exploiting what made them unique. It wasn't just death, it was erasure, a galactic slate wiped clean for the Xyrath to claim. The plague didn't stop at borders or atmospheres. It leapt from host to host, a relentless tide that no quarantine could hold. Planets burned their own ships to halt the spread, only to find the spores already in their soil, their water, their air. The Xyrath's genius lay in its unpredictability. Every infection was a mutation, a new nightmare sculpted for its prey. A fungal race dissolved into sludge, their spores choking their own kin. A silicon-based species hardened into statues, motionless and aware until their minds faded. The galaxy's diversity, its strength, became its undoing. Trillions perished. Civilizations that had stood for eons reduced to ruins. The Xyrath moved in, harvesting resources from the wreckage, their fleets gliding to the ashes of empires. They called it progress. To the rest, it was annihilation. Then the virus reached Sol System, a backwater star on the galaxy's edge. A derelict Zythar ship, its crew long dead, spiraled into Earth orbit and crashed into the Pacific. The impact sent plumes of water skyward, but something else rose with it. Glowing motes, microscopic and alive, drifting on the wind. Humanity noticed too late. Satellites picked up anomalies in the atmosphere. Faint signatures dismissed as noise until they weren't. Coastal cities reported the first signs. Trees curling into blackened husks, fish washing ashore with extra fins and lifeless eyes, dogs howling as their fur thickened into spines. Panic spread faster than the infection. News feeds looped footage of quarantine zones, hazmat teams sweeping streets, governments issuing useless warnings. The virus was here, and it was hungry. Scientists raced to understand it, locking themselves in labs as the world outside unraveled. They watched it tear through ecosystems, mutating everything it touched. Rats grew claws sharp enough to shred steel. Birds fell from the sky, feathers replaced by scales. The pattern was clear. It didn't just kill, it transformed, twisting life into something unrecognizable. Yet humans lingered, watching, waiting for the inevitable. Days passed, then weeks. The death toll climbed, but not as expected. Infections raged, but the bodies didn't pile up. Something was wrong, or right. In a sealed bunker, a scientist peered through a microscope at a sample of human blood laced with the virus. Her breath caught. The cells weren't rupturing, weren't mutating into chaos. They were binding, merging, glowing with an energy she couldn't explain. She whispered into the silence, her voice trembling with awe and dread. This isn't killing us, it's changing us. Outside, the world held its breath. teetering on the edge of collapse, unaware that the rules had just shifted. The world didn't end, it fractured. Cities turned into mazes of barricades and flickering lights as the virus sank its teeth into Earth. Quarantine sirens wailed, drowning out the screams of those who thought they'd be next. News anchors, pale and sweating, reported alien plague outbreaks, their screens flashing with images of warped animals and dying crops. Governments locked down everything, borders sealed tighter than a drum, but it didn't matter. The virus was already inside, carried by the air, the water, the very ground humanity stood on. People braced for the worst, expecting to dissolve or twist like the galaxy's fallen species. They waited for claws to erupt, for lungs to collapse, for the inevitable. But the inevitable never came. Instead, something impossible unfolded. In a coastal slum, a mother yanked a car off her pinned child, her arms trembling but unyielding, stronger than they'd ever been. In a crumbling hospital, a blind man blinked awake, colors flooding his world for the first time, his eyes catching light like polished glass. A soldier, scarred from battles long past, ran his fingers over smooth skin where wounds once festered, his body knitting itself whole overnight. The virus didn't break humans. It rewrote them. Reports trickled in, whispered at first, then shouted. A fisherman hauling nets with hands that crushed steel, a girl outrunning a truck on foot, her legs a blur. Chaos reigned, but not the kind anyone expected. Fear gripped the masses. Were they still human or something else? No one knew, and that uncertainty gnawed deeper than the infection itself. Dr. Elena Voss didn't wait for answers to fall from the sky. A biologist with a chipped tooth and a stubborn streak. She broke quarantine, dodging patrols to reach a shuttered university lab. Her team followed, a ragtag crew of grad students and a janitor who knew the building's back doors. They hauled equipment through dark halls, powered by stolen generators, and got to work. Voss stared at slides of infected blood, her microscope revealing a truth no one else had grasped. The virus wasn't a wrecking ball. It was a sculptor in other species. It smashed rigid genomes, forcing mutations that killed. But human DNA, messy and adaptable from eons of surviving Earth's gauntlet, didn't fight back. It swallowed the virus whole. The cells fused with it, strands intertwining like roots in fertile soil, sparking changes no textbook could predict. She tested it first on herself, a reckless jab of a needle laced with the strain. Her fever spiked, then broke. Her hearing sharpened. She caught the hum of a fly 2 rooms away. Her team followed suit, documenting every shift. One grew muscle overnight, lifting a desk with one hand. Another healed a broken arm in hours, the bone snapping back into place. Voss scribbled notes, her handwriting shaky but sure. Humanity's genetic chaos, the junk code other species lacked, was the key. The virus couldn't dominate. It could only enhance. She likened it to a storm hitting a forest. Alien trees snapped, but humans bent, their roots too tangled to uproot. The data piled up, undeniable and wild. Word leaked fast. A fisherman strolled out of quarantine zone, unscathed, snagging fish bare-handed from churning waves. A firefighter crawled from a collapsed building, his eyes glowing gold, coughing but alive. Social feeds buzzed with shaky videos, people bending steel, outpacing cars, shrugging off injuries that should have killed. The terrified called it a curse. The bold called it gift. Voss saw neither. She saw a chance. She hacked a satellite relay, her voice crackling over every frequency she could reach. Listen to me. We're not victims. We're evolving. This thing didn't take us. It's ours now. The broadcast cut to static, but the message landed. In bunkers and slums, in towers and tents, humanity heard her. Some wept, some cheered, some clutched weapons tighter. The world was still burning, still breaking, but a spark flared in the ashes. Outside, the Zyratha's ships loomed closer, their sensors sweeping Earth for signs of surrender. They'd seen this play out 100 times. Species buckling, begging, bowing. They expected humans to follow the script, to crumble under their own mutated flesh. But the script was torn. Humanity wasn't dying. It was waking up. Voss stood in her lab, staring at a map of glowing infection zones, her mind racing. The galaxy had thrown its worst at them, and they caught it, held it, made it their own. The question wasn't survival anymore. It was what came next. Humanity didn't wait for the Xyrath to knock. The old world was gone. Governments toppled, their suits and ties replaced by scavengers and fighters who didn't need orders to act. Power shifted to the streets, to the viral tribes that sprang up like weeds through cracked pavement. These weren't armies with flags. They were packs of the change bound by necessity and a shared fire. A welder with arms thick as beams forged armor from his own hardened skin. A teacher, her mind brushing others' thoughts, whispered plans across miles. Dr. Elena Voss, still sleepless and sharp, became their voice, not a commander, but spark. She bounced signals through jury-rigged radios, her word simple: "They think we're prey. Prove them wrong." The tribes listened, and they moved. The Xyrath fleet arrived, a swarm of sleek, crystalline hulls blotting out the stars. They'd come to harvest, expecting a planet of corpses or cowards. Instead, they found defiance. Humans didn't hide, they struck. A pilot, reflexes honed to a razor's edge, flew a patched-up jet into orbit, weaving through drone fire like it was a dance. He crashed into a Xyrath scout ship, ejecting just before impact, his parachute a speck against their burning wreckage. On the ground, Voss's team cracked the virus's code, twisting it into a weapon. They brewed a strain in vats, crude, unstable, but lethal to Xyrath biology. Volunteers lined up, no hesitation, injecting themselves with doses that turned their blood into a delivery system. Their veins pulsed with purpose. The counterattack hit, like a storm. Humans boarded Xyrath ships, some climbing wrecks with claws grown overnight, others leaping gaps no sane person would try. A dock worker with fists that shattered crystal punched through a hull, letting the tailored virus spill inside. It spread fast, a mist that clung to the Xyrath's gleaming forms. Their bodies cracked, fissures glowing as the infection ate them from within. A girl with speed no machine could match darted through a command deck, planting viral grenades, glass vials that burst into clouds of death. The aliens, so sure of their dominance, faltered, their comms filled with static, their orders drowned by human shouts. "This is our world." The sound echoed through every captured ship, a roar that shook the void. In labs, the work didn't stop. Chemists with enhanced focus mixed batches under flickering lights, their hands steady despite the chaos. A mechanic, his eyes seeing heat trails, guided missiles cobbled from scrap to their marks. The Xyrath tried to adapt, sealing bulkheads, venting air, but humans kept coming. A woman with lungs that filtered poison walked through gas traps, tearing out control nodes. A man with bones denser than steel rammed through walls, dragging cables free. The tailored virus wasn't perfect. It burned out fast, needing fresh hosts to spread, but humanity was endless. They threw themselves at the enemy, relentless, a tide that wouldn't break. The tide turned in orbit first. A Xyrath cruiser, its crew dissolving into shards, spun out of control and smashed into another. Debris rained down, lighting Earth's sky with streaks of fire. On the surface, tribes pushed back landing parties. A farmer with strength to uproot trees hurled Xyrath soldiers into their own shuttles, then torched them with a lighter and a can of fuel. A kid, barely a teen, outsmarted a drone swarm with a slingshot and scrap metal, laughing as they crashed. The Xyrath's precision unraveled. Every move they made, humans countered with raw, messy grit. Voss watched from her lab, a cracked tablet showing the fleet's retreat. She didn't smile. "Keep going," she said into the radio. "They don't get to leave whole." By dawn, the sky cleared. Xyrath ships littered the ground, their crystalline husks dull and lifeless. The tailored virus had done its job, jumping from human carriers to alien flesh, leaving nothing but ruin. Survivors stood among the wreckage, breathing hard, their bodies marked by the fight, claws chipped, skin scarred, eyes still glowing. The galaxy's conquerors were broken, their plan flipped on its head. Humanity hadn't just survived, they'd struck back, turning the Xyrath's own weapon into their downfall. The cost was high. Cities smoldered, millions were lost, but the tribes held firm. They'd taken a hit and thrown it back harder. Voss stepped outside, her boots crunching on alien debris. She looked up, the stars sharp against a bruised dawn. The Xyrath weren't gone, not yet. Their empire stretched far, and they'd come again. But now they knew Earth wasn't a prize to claim. It was a threat. Humanity had their scent, their weakness, and a taste of the fight. The tribes gathered, sharing food over fires, their voices rising in rough songs. They weren't the same species they'd been, but they were still human, stubborn, fierce, alive. The war wasn't over, but the first blow was theirs. Earth lay scarred, a patchwork of ash and green clawing back from the edge. The Xyrath were gone, their fleet a graveyard of shattered crystal strewn across continents. Smoke still curled from ruined cities, but life stirred beneath it. A man with hands that glowed faint blue lifted rubble from a collapsed school, freeing trapped supplies. A woman with skin tough as bark hauled logs to build a shelter, her breath steady despite the weight. Fields sprouted again, tended by farmers whose touch coaxed plants from poisoned soil. The virus had changed them, fused with them, and they used it. Rebuilding wasn't pretty. Tools were scarce, power grids dead, but humanity didn't need perfection. They needed progress, and they took it one stubborn step at a time. Dr. Elena Voss stood on a hill, a cracked journal in her hands. She wrote by firelight, her words rough but clear. We paid a price, but we gained a destiny. The tribes had won, scattering the Xyrath's grip on Earth, and the Taylor virus had left beyond, carried by captured ships to their distant worlds. Reports crackled in, alien outposts falling, their conquerors crumbling under humanity's borrowed weapon. The galaxy shifted, its balance tipped by a species it had ignored. Voss didn't celebrate. She knew the cost. Billions dead before the fight turned. Families lost in the first wave. Landscapes warped beyond recognition. Victory wasn't clean, but it was theirs. Not everyone welcomed the change. A fisherman sat by a river, staring at hands that could crush stone, refusing to use them. He muttered about losing himself, about the line between man and monster blurring. A nurse with eyes that saw through walls turned away patients, terrified of her own power. Splinters formed. Some shunned their enhancements, clinging to memories of softer days. Others flexed their new strength, ruling over rubble like petty kings. Fights broke out, quick and brutal, over food, land, or just fear. Humanity's old flaws, greed, pride, doubt, didn't vanish. They grew claws too. Voss watched it unfold, her pen tracing the mess. We're still us, she wrote, for better or worse. Yet hope flickered, small but fierce. A girl with fingers that sparked light planted a sapling, its leaves unfurling under her touch. She grinned dirt-streaked, as it stretched taller than her in days. A boy with legs that outran wind carried water to a camp, his laughter trailing behind. The change didn't just rebuild. They dreamed. Elders swapped stories around fires, their voices weaving a new history. The day humanity took the galaxy's worst and made their own. The tribe spread, linking up, trading skills. A healer with hands that mended flesh patched a stranger's wounds. A smith with heat in his palms forged tools from Xyrath wreckage. They weren't united, not yet, but they were alive, and that was enough. The stars called louder now. A pilot with eyes sharp as a hawk's patched the Xyrath shuttle, its engines humming under human hands. She launched it into orbit, a crew of the enhanced strapped in, muscles like steel, minds quick as lightning. They weren't chasing revenge, not entirely. They wanted answers. Who else was out there? What else could they claim? More ships followed, cobbled from alien tech and human grit. Lifting off from makeshift pads, the galaxy had underestimated them once, dismissed them as fragile. Now it would feel their weight. The Xyrath's empire was fracturing, and humanity aimed to kick the pieces apart. Voss looked up from her journal, the night sky a canvas of possibilities. She'd seen the virus twist them, seen it turn despair into defiance. They tried to break us, she said aloud, her voice steady, but we absorbed their worst and made it ours. The words hung in the air, a promise and a threat. The tribes below sang, their tunes rough but unbroken, a sound that carried beyond the firelight. The galaxy wasn't ready, not for a species that bent but never snapped. That took a plague and forged it into power. Earth pulsed beneath them, wounded but breathing, its people no longer just survivors, A final ship rose, its hull glinting against the void. No one knew where it would land, only that it wouldn't stop. Humanity had tasted the stars, and they hungered for more. The fisherman who feared his hands joined the crew, gripping controls with a tentative strength. The nurse who hid her sight looked out a porthole, mapping constellations. They carried the virus in their blood, a gift and a weapon, ready to meet whatever waited. The galaxy had thrown its might at them, and they'd thrown it back. Now they'd write their own story not as victims, but as something new, something unstoppable.